Hi everyone, welcome back to Math 11. So somebody asked me about some homework questions from section 3.3, Cosine Law. So I'm going to do some of these. So one of them was question 5. Both parts A and B, they're pretty much the same, so I will do one of them. The other one, you just can follow the example. So for question 5, you asked to find the missing angle to the nearest degree. So first of all, we need to figure out how to label this. Well, most of it is already labeled, but how do we apply this to our equation? So this clipping here from the right side, this is from your textbook as well. So again, that's the same thing as the formula on the top. But notice here we don't have ABC, we have QPR. So first, remember your uppercase letters are your angles, your lowercase letters are your angles. So opposite to the angles are going to be your side lengths. So for example, if this is side or angle Q, opposite to this is going to be lowercase q. So this is going to be lowercase q. This is angle R. This is going to be lowercase r. This is angle P or theta. This is going to be lowercase p. So the unfortunate, they had to use some other letter to label the angle that you're interested in. They could have just said angle P. That would be perhaps a little less confusing. So we need to find basically angle P. So what we're going to do is going to take one of these, doesn't matter which one. Let's say I pick that one. Instead of ABC, I'm just going to replace it with P, R, and Q. So whenever I have A, I'm going to plug in P. And then the A, B don't matter. You can plug in R or Q. So let's say B is going to be my R. So I'm going to replace it with R squared. And C is going to be my Q here. So plus Q squared minus 2R times Q cos of angle P. Now notice here that P and theta are the same thing. So here we can replace P with theta. So we're looking for the angle theta, which means we need to get the theta by itself first, which means we had to get cosine theta by itself first. So first step is to move the r squared and q squared. That's the easy part. We just had to subtract it from both sides, or just right now they're positive. As when you move it across, the equal sign will become negative. So we get p squared minus r squared minus q squared equal to negative 2rq cos theta. Okay. The next step is to get rid of this negative 2rq on the right side. So we're going to divide both sides by negative 2rq. So let me do this in a different color. So I'm going to do negative 2rq here and divided by negative 2rq on the left side. So on the right side, this will simplify away. You're left with cosine theta by itself. Once you have cosine theta by itself, the last step is to take the inverse. So to finally find theta, you're going to write theta equals to cosine inverse of all this stuff on the left side. So you're going to write all of this p squared minus r squared minus q squared over negative 2rq. And then you can plug in the numbers to get the value. Now another way you could have done this, instead of solving for theta first, you can just plug in the numbers for p, or yeah, you're given p, for r, q, and then just do all the numeric calculations first and then take the inverse for cosine, because you're going to be left with just one variable, which is theta, which is the unknown. So you don't necessarily have to do it the way I showed here, but this is the preferred way for me, because I know that you know how to basically apply proper steps to manipulate your equation. So then plug in the values for everything. So we're going to replace our p, our q, and r. So let's replace p. P is 2.2. Square, don't forget to square, minus r, which is 3.5. So notice here that the r will get squared. We're still going to end up with negative. Then we have q, which is 3.9. Over negative 2 times r, which is 3.5, times Q, which is 3.9. Okay, I'm going to put all of this inside of the brackets. Make sure your calculator is set to degrees. Again, that's the most common mistake. People forget to square things or forget to set their calculator to the proper mode. So do the calculation on the top first. So you're going to do 2.2 squared minus 3.5 squared minus 3.9 squared. Press equal, you're going to get negative 22.62. And then what you're going to do is you're going to press divide, open bracket, and enter negative 2 times 3.5 times 3.9, close the bracket, press equal, and you're going to get a decimal that is this number. So normally you wouldn't have to write this down, you just keep going, you press inverse cos, but just to show the step so you can check your work, you should see this number, 82857, so on, keeps going, and then you're going to press shift or second function depending on the calculator and press cosine to get the inverse function, and you should get 34.4 or 0.0477 degrees, and it keeps going. But we asked to round to the nearest degree, so we're going to round this to just 34 degrees. That's going to be the answer for part A. So again, same thing for part B. The only thing here is that you need to label your sides. So this is lowercase, this is uppercase y, this is going to be your lowercase y, lowercase z, lowercase x. And then when you're looking for theta, you're actually looking for the angle z. So instead of ABC, you're going to plug in x, y, z, and your theta is going to be replaced with, you can replace it with z, so it doesn't matter. So basically the steps are going to be exactly the same, we just have different labels for it. So label it first, and then just replace it into the equation. So that's question 5. Now question 7, you're not given a diagram. So that's the tricky part. If you're not given a diagram, you have to understand what it says here. So it says solve each triangle, which means you have to find all the missing sides, all the missing angles. Run all answers to the nearest tenth of a unit. Okay. So in this case, we need to find, if you're given, I'm going to do A and C here. In A, you're given a triangle DEF. You're given two sides, D and E, and you're also given angle F. So you're missing two angles and one side. So first, just make a diagram. So for part A, let me use a different color here. Part A, we're going to make a triangle first. Okay? You're going to pick some letters, well, some angles, doesn't matter which one is which here. Let's say I start at the top, I call this D, E, and F. Okay? Then I'm going to label the sides, which means this is going to be my lowercase e, lowercase d, lowercase f. Then you're going to label what you're given, what you know. So for example, d is given, so I'm going to write d equals to 5 centimeters. What else I'm given? I'm given side E is 6.5, so E equals to 6.5 centimeters. And F, angle F is 65, so I know that angle F is 65 degrees here. So I need to find side F, and I need to find angle E and D. Once you find E or D, then you can use 180 minus the other two to find the third one. Now, whenever you're solving triangles, you want to start using the sine law, because sine law is simpler than cosine law. But for sine law, you had to have an opposite side to an angle. Notice here that f, we don't know lowercase f, so we can't use sine law. We had to use cosine law. So let's use cosine law to find the side f first. And again, you're going to use your equation right here, right? You can write it down for the letters that we have here. So let me do that. So I inserted the equation here so we can see it. So the next step is, again, the tricky part is just plugging in the right letters, right? So if you're looking for side f, we're going to replace, for example, a with f, okay? And then cos a is going to replace with uppercase f, so it's 65 degrees. So what we're going to do is, again, to find side f, we're going to say that f squared equals e squared plus d squared minus 2 times E times D times the cosine of angle F, which in this case is 65 degrees. Because I already know that, I will plug in 65 here, just so I don't need to replace it again. Okay, so let's say in this case, instead of solving for F, I plug in the numbers first. Okay, although when you're missing a side, it's not that hard because all you had to do is just plug in the numbers and then take the square root. But let's try it a different way this time. Let's just plug in the numbers right away. So again, E is given to me, D is given to me, so I'm going to plug those in. So 6.5 squared plus 5.0 squared minus 2 times 6.5 times 5.0 times cosine of 65. Okay, now this is F squared. This is not F, this is F squared, so we'll have to take the square root as final step. So then F is going to equal to the square root of whatever this answer here is. So let's see what that is. 6.5 squared plus 5.0 squared minus 2 times 6.5 times 5 times cosine of 65. This all equals to something like this, 39.7798. It keeps going. So again, I would just leave the number in the calculator. You need to write it down and then take the square root of this. So the answer should be 6.30712 and so on. So the question asks us to round to the nearest tenth of a unit. So that's one decimal place. So we're going to round this to 6.3 centimeters. So we found our side F, which means we can add that into here, but I'm not going to use this number for my other calculations, okay? And again, the reason is because that's not going to be as accurate as the original values. So now that I know one missing side, I'm missing the angles. Once you know the missing side, you could use sine law. Once you know F side, you can use sine law to find angle E or angle D. That would be the easiest way to do it. So let me use sine law first and then also use cosine law just to show you that you can still find it using cosine law as well. You can use cosine law to find the angles and sides, but sometimes it's easier to use sine law because it's simpler. So anyway, we know what side F is. We can find one of the missing angles. So let's say we use sine law now to find the angle D. Okay, so for sine law, I'm going to say, because I'm looking for the angle, I'm going to write the sine on the top. So I'm going to write sine E over side E, and then sine F over side F. Now notice here that I know what this is. I know my value for E. I found my value for lowercase f, and I know my value for the angle f. Okay, so there's only one unknown, which is angle E. I'm going to cross multiply this to solve for sine E, which means we have to move this lowercase c to the top, so we get sine of angle E equal to lowercase e times sine f over f, which means that the angle angle E, will equal to the sine inverse of all of this. Okay, then you can plug in the numbers. Sine inverse of E, which is 6.5, times sine f, which is 65 here, sine 65, divided by f, which is 6.3. And in fact, I probably want to maybe use that number there instead of 6.3 because it's going to give me some rounding error. Or if you still have it on the calculator, you might want to use that. And then close the bracket. So I'm going to do on my calculator, I'm going to do 6.5 times the sine of 65, okay, divided by 6.3. That's going to give me 0.934. Then I'm going to take the shift inverse of sine to get the inverse of that, and I'm going to get the value for the angle E, which is 69 0.0709. Keeps going. This is in degrees. Now, in this case, we're also going to round this to one decimal place. So the angle, we're going to round this up to 69.1. So here I use sine law and cosine law to help me find the missing angles. But we can also solve this using cosine law. We can find the missing angle E or missing angle D using cosine law. It's just going to be a little longer. So let's say if you were using cosine law, maybe because you were still missing some of the other information which would prevent you from using sine law. So let's say we do the same thing and find the angle E again using cosine law. So let me switch back to blue. If you are using cosine law, again, we're going to use one of these equations up here. And in this case, let's write it down first. So we want to plug in, instead of, let's say we use the first equation here, instead of A, we're going to replace it with a D. So all the other letters, this means this is going to be lowercase d here. So, sorry, not D, E. We're looking for angle E. So you're going to say E squared is going to equal to F squared plus D squared minus 2FD times cosine of angle E, right? So that's the only tricky part with the cosine law, is that like plugging in the right variables into your equation. Once you have the variables plugged in, then you can actually solve for the angle E. So like I said, I'm gonna plug in numbers right away in this case. So I'm not gonna solve for E first, I'm gonna plug in the numbers and then do the math and then find E as a final step. So this means that we can start plugging in the values. So again, our side E is 6.5. So I'm gonna plug in 6.5 here, squared. F is 6.3. And D is 5.0 minus 2 times F, which is, F was 6.3, not 5. 6.3 times D, which is 5, times cos E. All right. So again, here I'm just taking the equation as is, plugging in numbers right away, and then doing all this math first, and then actually getting the value for E. So let me do it on the right side here. So 6.5 squared equals to 42.25. Okay? And then I can do this math here, 6.3 squared plus 5.0 squared. That's going to be 64.69 minus, I'm going to multiply these three numbers together. So 2 times 6.3 times 5.0, that's 63. Okay? Times cos E. So if you do the math first, it does simplify your work a little bit. So the next step is to get the cosine E by itself. So now we have to move the 64.69 to the left. So we're going to end up with 42.25 minus 64.69 equal to negative 63 cos E. So let's do 42.25 minus 64.69. We get negative 22.44 equal to negative 63 cos E. Now, because we have negatives on both sides of this, if you divide this by -1 and you divide this side by -1, the negatives will basically disappear there, reduce away. So now we have 63 here and on this side, so we have to divide by 63 both sides. So basically cos E is going to be equal to, cos E equals to 22.44 divided by 63. So again, we divided both sides by 63, which on the right side will go away. You're left with cos E by itself. And on the left side, you're going to end up with 22.44 over 63, which then equals to, divided by 63 equals to 0.35619, and so on. So again, I would just keep this number in the calculator and then take the inverse of it to get the actual value for E. So this is going to be cos inverse of that number, 0.35619. And again, I would just do this on the calculator in one step. So I'm going to get 69.1 degree as well. So as you can see, we still get the same answer. Okay, but using cosine law is a lot more work than using sine law. That's why whenever you are solving a triangle, see if you can use sine law first because it's simpler. If you can't, then you use cosine law. So anyway, in this case, I solved for the angle both ways using sine and cosine law. So now we know two of the angles. We know all three sides. So the last step is to find the last angle. Now the last angle is easy to find once you know two of them because all we have to do now is to subtract from 180 because all interior angles of a triangle add 280 degrees. So now that we know E, we're just missing angle D. So E equals to 69.1. So this is 69.1 degrees. So D is going to equal to, so D equals to 180 minus E minus F. So this equals to 180. E we found to be 69.1 degrees, and F was given to be 65. Okay, so again, this equals 180 minus 69.1 minus 65 degrees. We get 45.9. Okay, so that means the angle D is 45.9. So that's it. We found the missing angles and we found the missing side. So the other question like that, question B, is exactly the same, just different letters. You're gonna start with the diagram. Instead of DEF, you have PQR. You're gonna label it. You're gonna find the missing side. Then you're gonna find the missing angle, and that's it. Now in question C, you're given L, M, and N. So you're given all three sides, no angles at all. So let's do 7C next.